So please welcome with me very loudly the founder of Quicksilver, Joe Bowman.
Hey Yuri, thank you.
What's up?
So I'm Joe Bowman. I'm the CEO of Ingenuity and co-founder of the Quicksilver protocol. And today I wanted to speak to you about liquid staking in the Cosmos. So what is the problem that we face with liquidity in the Cosmos currently? So for proof of stake, you have delegators delegating to validators, and those tokens are locked up as by way of security deposit. But the problem that we have is that only 5% of those tokens can ever actually be slashed. So we've got 95% of these tokens are kind of sat there, they're not utilized, and actually this ends up being quite a significant amount of capital. So I mean, today's not the best example to kind of do the sums after our recent downturn, but at the moment we've got $5 billion staked across the Cosmos or the IBC ecosystem. If we look at these numbers from about 2 or 3 months ago, we're looking at 10x these numbers. So no, it's not unreasonable to say that when we come back to a more decent time in the market, that we're talking about tens of billions of dollars of capital that's sat there and it's completely not used. So no, staking, as we are all familiar with, we delegate tokens to validators, and these delegations are locked, and they're subject to an unbonding period measured in weeks rather than days. Now, obviously, a higher bonded stake is what we aim for, because a higher bonded stake means that the cost of attacking a chain is significantly more expensive, and therefore we maximize security. So the more stake that is bonded, the better secure our networks are. However, this wasn't a problem historically, but with the advent of DeFi, with the launch of Osmosis and the existence of IBC and all these other DeFi protocols that have come about, users now have to make a choice, a conscious choice between, do I continue to stake and secure the network, which is attracting APYs of sub 100% normally, or do I ape into the latest degen craze and earn myself many times more returns for my money? And this is a difficult decision. Now, what liquid staking allows us to do is to have a protocol that controls delegations on behalf of the user. So rather than the user delegating directly, they delegate via a protocol, and this protocol can then offer or can issue a token that is representative of that staked position. This token can then is still liquid, so it can be taken off chain. It can be put into protocols like Osmosis or Carver or Yumi or whatever, lending protocols or DeFi protocols that you want to use. And you're still able to maintain that stake position. The security of the network's not affected. And you're able to continue earning both your staking rewards, but also the other rewards that you can get through DeFi. So this is kind of what we see as the solution to the staker's dilemma, where you can both stake and maintain liquidity. It maximizes chain security, and in fact, liquid staking allows us to go from a current average stake supply for most chains is somewhere between 40 to 60%. It enables us to converge upon closer to 100%, because in reality, once you have solved this liquidity problem, you don't ever need to have liquid atoms, liquid Osmo. You have the liquid version of these tokens. You can use them, you maintain your liquidity, but you also maintain the security of the chain. And there's no need to miss out on these DeFi yields. So Interchain Staking takes this process of liquid staking one step further. It is a protocol that is not aligned to a particular chain, but it allows liquid staking across a multitude of chains. And that's where Quicksilver comes in. Quicksilver itself is a sovereign Cosmos SDK blockchain, and it provides liquid staking to any IBC-connected chain, and it's completely owned and controlled by cosmonauts. And that's kind of one of the critical things for me about Quicksilver, is that the tokens will be distributed as far and wide as possible to make sure that everybody who has an interest in the ecosystem is able to have a say over Quicksilver. Now, Quicksilver itself uses a whole bunch of really cool technologies that have come out in the last couple of years, including Interchain Accounts, Interchain Queries, and the Liquidity Staking module. And it has some features that we'll go over shortly called risk socialization and reward socialization, an unrestricted validator set, and governance by proxy. So what are Interchain Accounts? Interchain Accounts is a mechanism whereby a host chain can wholly control, a controller chain can wholly control and own an account on a host chain via IBC messages. So in this example, we've got the controller chain requests a new Interchain account on the host chain. The host chain comes back and says, okay, this is your new address. And once that wallet has been funded, it can then be used to submit arbitrary messages from the host or on the host chain at the behest of the controller chain. So in this case, we send a message send for one new atom. The host chain executes the command, and then it sends an acknowledgement back. So why do we use Interchain Accounts in Quicksilver? So in Quicksilver, we have a couple of events whereby Interchain Accounts are used. So when a zone is registered, and this is as a result of a governance vote controlled by Quick token holders, a deposit account, a withdrawal account, and a whole bunch of what we call delegate accounts, which actually control the delegations themselves, are created. And the first thing we do is we set all the delegate accounts, set their withdrawal address to the withdrawal account, and that will come into play a bit later on. When we receive deposits from users on the on the deposit account, then we determine what the allocation of that capital is across the delegate accounts, and we send a transaction via Interchain Accounts to deploy that capital across and distribute it widely across those delegate accounts. And then we mint the Q assets. At the end of an epoch, we withdraw the rewards. So all these delegate accounts, we submit a message withdraw reward transaction. We withdraw the rewards. The protocol takes a fee, which is how we pay or reward our Quicksilver token holders for backing the chain. And then we determine the allocation of those rewards across the delegate accounts, and we execute a message send to distribute that capital again. And when the delegate account then receives a message receives funds, it then delegates those funds again via Interchain Accounts. So we then have what we call Interchain Queries. Now, one thing Interchain Accounts doesn't solve is the collection of data or of state from the host chain. So we're able to control accounts, but what we can't do is say or assert what the balance of a certain value is, of a certain account is. So the problem is, how do we know when someone has deposited funds? And there's a couple of different ways that we could try this. The first of which is we could get every node to issue an RPC request. That's quite problematic in that as soon as a request fails, we end up with a difference in state, non-deterministic behavior. The second, which we're probably a bit more familiar with, is the concept of oracles. Oracles they're useful, they have their place. They're used widely across various ecosystems, but they do have trust implications. So if you have a smaller oracle set, you have to know that you can trust that small n number of validators, and they're mildly inefficient in that you have to submit n number of transactions for every value. So we can do an oracle with the entire validator set. Again, it minimizes that trust implication, but it's quite inefficient with the number of transactions that need to be executed to be able to submit a single value to the chain. Or we can have what we call interchain queries. So interchain queries have the same trust assumptions as IBC. And there's a single transaction per value that you request. And what interchain queries do is that it retrieves the data from the target chain via RPC, but it requests the Merkle tree proof of that data. And then we can go back, use our IBC client to verify that the data is correct, and that's how interchain queries work. There's now a quick example of this, so Interchain Queries is a feature that allows the ingestion of data from a target chain validated by Merkle proofs. The requesting chain says, I need this data, which is a balance of the account, if I remember correctly, from a target chain, and I want to execute this function when returned. The relayer makes an RPC request for that data from the key value store with the proof. The target chain obviously responds to that request. The relayer packages it up again and submits it back to the requesting chain, which executes the transaction with that data in. It verifies the Merkle tree proof against the client state, and we're good to go. We can execute the callback function with data that we know is cryptographically verified. So the third piece we have is the liquidity staking module. So this is a feature that iClusion have built, and it's absolutely fantastic. And it allows users to transfer delegated bonded stake without unbonding it. So rather than having to go through the process of unbonding your atoms to be able to transfer them to another user, you can tokenize these tokens, send them across to another user, and who can then redeem them again. So Quicksilver can use Liquid Staking module to support onboarding new users without the need for an unbonding period, without the need to lose rewards. So in this example, Alice has delegated 10 atoms to both the blue validator and the pink validator, and she currently has 0 balance in her wallet. I don't know how she's paying fees, actually, but we'll ignore that. So Alice submits a message tokenized shares transaction for 1 atom from the blue validator, and you'll see that she no longer has a delegation as such to the blue validator, but she does have a balance of, that's actually one atom's worth, but it's supposed to be 10. 10 atoms worth of Cosmos Valopper, whatever the hell that is, 1 tokens. So this is the Valopper address of the blue validator with an index after it. And that's how the liquidity staking module tracks where those tokens originated from. So these tokens are still bonded. They're still accruing rewards, and they're accruing rewards to an address that was specified in the message tokenized shares transaction. Now, because these are just tokens sat in her wallet, Alice is able to transfer them. So Alice is able to send these tokens. She can send them via message send, but then the ownership of that token doesn't get transferred as well. So she sends them using message transfer tokenized share. And she sends this to Bob and specifies the denomination in the transaction, and those transactions are then shared over to Bob. Sorry, the tokens are shared to Bob, and the reward accrual is also transferred to Bob. And then Bob can submit a message redeem tokens transaction and convert his tokenized shares to a normal delegation. And now Bob and Alice both have 0 balance and 10 atoms delegated. The fourth and final technology I wanted to quickly go over was Interchain Security. And anyone that was here for Marius's talk earlier, he did a much better job of explaining this than I will do. So I'm going to quickly scoot over it. But essentially, Interchain Security allows a consumer chain to use or utilize the security of a much larger producer chain. So in this case, the consumer chain is using all 5 validators that the producer chain is offered. And then if a validator on the consumer chain gets slashed, that slashing is mirrored on the producer chain. And similarly, if the validator falls out of the validator set, it will be reflected in the consumer chain as well. And conversely, if a validator gets added in, similarly, that validator set update will be reflected on the consumer chain. Now, why is this relevant? Because Quicksilver recognizes that maximizing security is the goal. The Cosmos Hub will be the leading provider of security within the Cosmos ecosystem. So, and liquid staking, of course, will allow for, as I said before, this convergence upon 100% stake supply goal that is, I guess, this apocryphal golden target. So Quicksilver intends to use Interchain Security as and when it becomes available, and that hopefully will ensure that the Quicksilver protocol is as secure as it can be, given that it is handling assets from a multitude of different chains. So the first of these features that I mentioned is risk and reward socialization. Validators A and B Any two validators are different. They have different security profiles, different risk profiles, different configurations, different people running them. So we cannot say that their delegations are equal in any way. So how do we maintain fungibility between tokens issued for delegations on validator A and tokens issued on delegations to validator B? So what we do is we have a pool. All of the capital that is delegated through Quicksilver goes into this pool. And here we have 500 stake has been added to the pool. That 500 stake is delegated by Quicksilver across 5 validators. The supply of Q atoms, therefore, at a 1.0 redemption rate is 500 Q stake, sorry. And each Q stake can then be redeemed for 1 stake. So here we come to the point where we withdraw rewards, and we're withdrawing 10 stake from validators 3, 4, and 5. I know the sums are off here, actually, but validator 10's got a higher commission rate, so it returns 5 stake, and validator 1 has 2.5 stake returned. So now that the stake that's backing those same 500 Q stake is actually 537.5 stake. So the redemption rate for any individual stake token is 1.075. And that's how we accrue rewards within the Quicksilver protocol. There's no peg between Q atoms and atoms. There's no peg between Q osmo and osmo. The redemption rate will increase as rewards are accrued. And we do the same, or the opposite of this, for risk socialization. So in the same situation, 500 stake, 500 Q stake, redemption rate of 1.0. If validator 5 is down for an extended period of time and gets slashed for downtime, then we end up with 99.9 stake there. That affects the overall pool size to 499.9 stake, and the supply is still 500 Q stake. So every time we redeem 1 Q stake, we're able to, we only get 0.9998 stake back. Now, in the context of this alongside receiving rewards, actually you're not going to notice the downtime slashing, because it's so minimal, it's spread across multiple users. Downtime slashing is probably not going to be something that is noticeable to most users. In the event that we have a double sign and validator 5 gets slashed 5%, obviously the impact is slightly greater, but it's still spread across lots of users. So instead of delegations to that one misbehaving validator being slashed 5%, everybody effectively in this case gets slashed 1%. So what does this mean for users of Quicksilver? Well, the probability of being impacted by a slashing does increase. There's no way to avoid that. But actually, the impact of said slashing is massively reduced. As I said, the impact of a downtime slashing ends up being so minimal that you're largely not going to notice that it's happened. Users will then choose to delegate away from poor performers. And over time, those poor performers will either have to improve the services they provide, or they get impacted by not being selected for delegations. The other feature of Quicksilver is that we have no whitelisted validator set. So a number of liquid staking protocols that exist to date, and they have good reasons for doing so, they will select a curated list of validators that they choose to delegate to. Now, I understand the reasons why we do this, but from my perspective, this isn't the optimal way of doing it. I find it gatekeeps against smaller validators entering the set, but it actually also increases centralization. And usually these whitelisted validators are validators that are already in the top 10. So this exacerbates the problem of the fact that these guys already have a disproportionate amount of stake and makes the problem worse. But it also reduces choice for users. And for me, one of the reasons I got into crypto is the whole premise behind self-sovereignty and self-determination. And I would like to think that as a user, I should be able to make that choice. Whether it's the right choice or the wrong choice, it's still my choice to make. So within Quicksilver, users are able to choose any validator they want from the validator set of a connected zone. The protocol isn't opinionated. The protocol doesn't care. It has no opinion on whether this validator is good or bad or evil. But that doesn't mean that's not the end of the kind of road for it, because governance can choose in the case of persistent downtime, in the case of malicious behavior or not participating in governance, to remove the option for that validator to be delegated to. So governance has control over this. The final feature, I think, is governance by proxy. So this is a facility that allows a user who delegates through Quicksilver to maintain the same governance rights that they have natively. So if you stake natively, you're able to override your validator's choice when it comes to governance proposals, and governance by proxy essentially allows you to do that through Quicksilver. So proposals that are happening on chains that Quicksilver has onboarded are observed by the chain, they get mirrored within the protocol, and then you, as a holder of Q atoms, will be able to vote on that governance proposal, and shortly before tally time, the aggregate vote will be broadcast on behalf of users to the hub via Interchain Accounts again. And this is going to be arriving in our first post-Genesis upgrade. Participation rewards is a class of rewards that is designed to reward users for taking part in the process, taking part in the protocol and using Quicksilver. And we used it to try and incentivize good behavior, in inverted commas. So users that choose to delegate to validators who are decentralized or lower down the validator set, they're behaving well, they're taking part in governance, and there's a whole raft of criteria that can be added to this score at some point. Will receive a higher proportion of participation rewards. So each epoch, validators are scored based upon these conditions, and users will receive participation rewards based upon the validators they delegate to and these scores. So timeline. Currently our first public testnet, Rhapsody, is live. We've got 300 validators on that testnet, which is way more than I'd ever expected. And it's going reasonably well. The first update on that testnet is happening this week. And then the next stage is an incentivized testnet, which is scheduled to happen later this month or early next month. There will be 10 million quick tokens. That's 5% of the Genesis supply in testnet incentives. And those who have participated in the current testnet will get a sort of kind of first refusal to take part in the incentivized testnet. And the testnet will also, in addition to incentivizing validators, will also have a user-facing element to it. So instead of just rewarding validators for taking part and running the software, we also want users to come and actually interact with the software and use it in a testnet scenario, and users will get rewards as well. Genesis we have slated for mid-July. So at this point, liquid tokens deposited on via Quicksilver, but not, well, we'll come on to this. So liquid tokens will definitely be able to be deposited on Quicksilver for any chain that runs Interchain Accounts. Staked assets, so these are existing delegations, will be available to any chain that has enabled the Liquidity Staking module. Unbonding and undelegating assets at Genesis will again only be enabled for zones with a liquid staking module, and obviously native governance is going to be in place as well. The caveat is that undelegating from zones without the liquid staking module will be disabled for the first release. I mean, it's something we're hoping to either iron out shortly afterwards or hope that the liquidity staking module gets deployed to zones we onboard. And the staking of the quick tokens is obviously enabled, and participation rewards will also be there. The governance by proxy feature, as I mentioned earlier, will come in the first post-Genesis upgrade. And that's slated for Q3. So governance by proxy and also COSM WASM. So we're going to enable users to build on top of Quicksilver using the Q assets as their kind of base collateral. We hope to attract a bunch of DeFi protocols to build on our platform. And that is the end of my talk. Thank you very much for having me. And hopefully there'll be some questions from jury.
Thank you, Joe. Yes, we have a bunch of questions, but sadly we just have time for one question, but sorry. I guess, no worries. But you have your booth just around the corner so people can reach out there.
Absolutely.
So, sorry. So, the one question I would like to ask you is, Are user votes submitted as a single vote or as a constituted vote? S and QS votes are at 49% yes and 51% no. Will QS submit a yes, no, or both?
It will submit both. So I mentioned earlier the delegate accounts and how for every onboarded zone, we issue a bunch of delegate accounts. Now, the reason for doing so is we try and balance the capital across all of those accounts as equally as possible. So in the case of 50 delegate accounts, then you have a 2% resolution when it comes to distributing the vote. If it's a case of 100 delegate accounts, you end up with a 1% resolution. A lot of this depends on what the overhead of managing 100 accounts is, but best case scenario, 1% resolution is kind of what we're hoping for.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.